Microphones. It is an absolutely essential tool for content creation, one that people often ignore because they can just buy the Blue Yeti and be done with it. It's not that the Blue Yeti doesn't work. It definitely does, and it sounds excellent. It's just that in the internet content creation sphere, the Blue Yeti is some of the most overused microphones that content creators on the internet generally use, right next to the Shure SM7B. We'll talk about that in a bit. Depending on where you buy them, you can get the Blue Yeti for around $185 Australian. For some reason, Amazon redirects me to its Australian page, so converted to USD, that'd be around $132. The thing is, the Blue Yeti is way more than what people really need. Why? Because the Blue Yeti is a microphone that has 4 polar patterns. Polar patterns are basically the directions that the microphones will take its sound source from. Cardioid polar patterns, like this one, will only pick the sound at the front of the microphone. Shut it. Cardioid polar pattern, like the one that this microphone uses, will only pick the sound at the front of the microphone. So if I turn this microphone all the way like there, you literally cannot hear me. If I speak in the back of the microphone, you can't hear me. If I speak on the side like this, you cannot hear me. So you can only hear me if I put the microphone literally in front. Omnidirectional will pick the sound from around the mic. Typically, omnidirectional microphones are condenser microphones or one of those like clip-on lavalier microphones. And then you got the figure 8, which will pick the sound from 2 sides of the microphone, which is usually on the front, and the back, wherever your perspective is. The Blue Yeti has 4 polar patterns, 1 cardioid, 1 omni, and 2 figure 8s. Most people who buy the Blue Yeti only need 1, and that's the cardioid polar pattern. Some content creators even go to the next level of not reading the instruction by speaking at the top of the microphone like it's a handheld stage mic rather than on the side of the microphone. Point is, the microphone space is really competitive, and people tend to generally spend a lot of money on microphones purely based on popularity reasons and not practical reasons or budget reasons. That's because most people just look at microphones, put them in, and shout. As long as it produces decent sound, who cares, right? If that's the case, then there's no need to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a USB microphone when there are cheaper alternatives like Blue Snowball Ice or the Yeti Nano. Even gaming companies can make some seriously competitive USB microphones. The HyperX Solocast, Razer Siren Mini, all great cheaper alternatives. And if you do not like the gamer aesthetic, the Samsung Q2U or the Meteor, whose legs I chopped off. All of these are cheaper alternatives that still make great sound. What most people don't know is that there are ups and downs of using microphones on certain types. They just look at a content creator and ask, what microphone are they using? And they just roll with it, even if they have to sell their kidneys for it. And that brings me to the Shure SM7B, the one microphone that a lot of most popular YouTubers, streamers, internet content creators, and podcasters most often use. Why? Because it's an excellent studio-grade microphone that absolutely excels for voice. Lots and lots of recording studios use this microphone. Michael Jackson used it for Thriller at one point. It also cost $400. No, seriously. The Shure SM7B is a studio-grade dynamic microphone that's more meant for professional singers and broadcasters alike. And a lot of Twitch streamers and YouTubers. It's a very popular choice for them. If you own a Shure SM7B, that tells me a couple of things. First, you're rich or financially stable enough to afford this kind of tech, which is perfectly fine for most people. But sometimes it's a detriment towards your image. I've seen political YouTubers that preach about anti-capitalism that use this expensive $400 microphone that only rich people or people with too much disposable income can afford. There's no better way to show that you're part of the working class with a studio-grade $400 microphone. Second is, you are serious about your audio and you want to take it to the next level with professional-grade stuff. And this microphone is the one that suits your needs, even after lots and lots of research towards other microphones, which I can respect. Totally 100% reasonable. And finally, the third, and in my opinion, the worst reason, you bought this microphone based on popularity and looks, and not knowing that there are so many other microphones that are cheaper and do the job just fine. Now, some of you are going to be like, oh, you're just jealous that you don't have enough money to spend on a microphone that all the popular podcasters and streamers use, and you have to resort to cheap crap. Actually, I do have enough money to spend for a Shure SM7B. It's just that I have better things to spend my money than a Shure SM7B. The microphone is so expensive here in Indonesia, it is the same price of my touchscreen work laptop. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Behringer XM8500. This microphone costs 25 bucks here, and it's absolutely brilliant. Let me just do a quick switch. This is the Samsung Q2U, which is both an XLR and USB microphone, a darling in terms of budget microphones that I've seen a lot of content creators recommend, but I haven't seen a lot of people use it. This one used to cost 50 bucks, but now it's around 72 because there's so much demand for it. Okay, going back to you, Behringer. If you are looking for that Shure sound, I recommend the Shure SM57, which is an instrument microphone, but it works great with voice as well, as long as you have dual windscreen layers. Or the Shure SM58, the classic stage microphone that has been industry standard for decades. These two microphones cost a quarter of the price of the Shure SM7B, and they work just fine. But hey, if you want to take it to the next level, take a look at James Rolfe's setup. I love James. I love his content. He's so down to earth. I mean, look, he's using a cheap looking stage mic for his podcast, which is an unusual choice for a podcast. He's one of the few YouTubers that I have seen that are willing to use a handheld stage mic for podcasting. Now, I could be wrong, but that logo on the mic is very distinctive. That is a Neumann KMS 104 or 105, $699. And he has so many of them for his podcast. Now that's a flex if I've ever seen one. But speaking of handheld stage microphone, this is the type of microphone that I don't often see in podcast or content creation. I think it's because I mostly watch popular content creators, so it could be due to the popularity bias, and most popular content creators have either enough disposable income to spend on microphone or don't have too much knowledge about microphones, so they just buy whatever that's popular. The dynamic handheld stage microphone is an absolutely underappreciated type of microphone that I don't see a lot of people use for content creation, even though it could be incredibly beneficial to them. Before we go even further, let me explain. Did you know that there are two types of microphones based on how they're constructed? This is a dynamic microphone. This is a condenser microphone. A dynamic microphone is a lot more primitive in terms of the design. Usually, handheld stage microphones are dynamic mics, but there are handheld stage microphones that are also condensers, like the Neumann. Podcast or broadcast microphones like the Shure SM7B is a dynamic, one that's notoriously hungry for gain, and you need to drive your audio interface or your preamp so hard in order to get a good sound out of it. There are also other broadcast dynamics like the Electro Voice RE20. I've seen some content creators use that, and also the Rode Procaster or the Pod mic. I also see some content creators use those. If you want a good broadcast dynamic microphone, the Pod mic is a really good option. My school uses it for their podcast. It's also excellent. The benefit of using a dynamic is that it's quiet and less sensitive to noise, meaning that it's perfectly ideal if you have a noisy environment, which I do have. Sometimes there are dogs barking in the background, sometimes the neighbors are noisy or singing karaoke. This type of microphone is the ideal microphone if you have noises around your room. Let me show you. I have a fan in the background, and I'm gonna set that one up to max speed. My webcam microphone picked that one up pretty easily. Let me show you what happens if I turn it off. Notice how it fades in the background. This is the dynamic microphone. No post-processing other than a little boost in the audio so that you can hear better. The fan is turned off. Let me turn it on at max speed. It's on max speed. It's literally on max speed. Let me just... Can you hear it? Can you hear it from here? It's amazing, isn't it? Dynamic microphones can handle loud noises better, which is why they're suited for drums, electric guitars, and of course, podcasts on rooms that are not treated with sound dampening materials. So basically, your common everyday room, like mine. This is why I prefer dynamics. My room doesn't have any sorts of sound treatment. I got a bunch of background noises like trucks coming in the neighborhood or construction noises because the area around my home is actually still under construction. Dynamics mitigate those types of noises pretty well. Another benefit to dynamic is that they tend to be really cheap. Again, the Behringer XM8500, great value dynamic microphone for 25 bucks or even less, depending on where you shop it. But you need an audio interface for this one because this is an XLR microphone and it does not end to any plugs that you can put on your PC. You can get the M Audio M-Track Solo, which is the one that my brother uses, or the Behringer UM2 or the Behringer UM-C922 for budget audio interfaces. I highly recommend all of you to go with XLR microphones. Once you go to XLR microphones, you'll never go back to USB, and you'll open up to so much more microphones for you to use and to upgrade in the future. But if you want a dynamic USB microphone, the Samson Q2U. I've been using this ever since 2016 or 2017, and this thing has been an amazing investment for my channel. This is an absolute darling for a microphone and I still recommend it even to this day. There's also the Audio-Technica ATR2100 or the ATR2100X and AT2005, all of which are great USB dynamic options as well. And then you have condenser microphones. Condenser microphones are usually what USB microphones are, like the Blue Yeti or like the one I'm using right now, which is the Audio-Technica AT2020. A condenser is the exact opposite of a dynamic. It's much more sensitive to noise and it can pick up sounds that are much brighter and livelier than a dynamic. This is an audio sample of a condenser microphone. This is the Audio-Technica AT2020. I'm gonna turn on the fan in the background at max speed. This is an audio sample of a dynamic microphone, a handheld stage dynamic microphone. This is the Behringer XM8500. I'm going to turn the fan on in the background and put it at maximum speed. Condenser microphones require what's called phantom power, which will power up the microphone inside the capsule so that it can capture much brighter and much wider sound. It should be available in all audio interfaces if you decide to hook this microphone up to one. Condensers are great if you want to pick up a more natural sound of your voice, and that's why they're 100% ideal for singing, voiceover works, and acoustic instruments. However, because it's a lot more sensitive, it's not so good at rejecting background noises around the room, which is why I don't recommend condenser microphones, especially USB condenser microphones, if you have a common everyday room and there's a lot of background noise from your neighbors or from the windows or from the outside, all that sort of stuff. Condenser microphones are also very harsh to plosives, which are basically the harsh P's and B's that happen when you speak to a microphone. I need to have a pop filter on with the Audio-Technica because if I don't, then the microphone is gonna easily pick up the plosives. This is the plosive issue test for the Audio-Technica AT2020. Please bring pizza pronto. Please bring pizza pronto. Please bring pizza pronto. Please bring pizza pronto. As you can hear, it doesn't receive plosives very well. This is especially true if you have a condenser where the grill is open and you can see the microphone capsule inside it. This is a cheap condenser microphone. This is the BM800. A lot of BM800 microphones usually have this type of look, and I can literally shine a light through it and you will see the condenser capsule that's inside it. You can even see the condenser capsule inside the Audio-Technica, as you can see right there. I can shine the light through it and you can see through it. You can't see it through the camera, but in real life, you are able to see through it. A dynamic microphone has that plosive issue as well, but it's not as bad as a condenser. Personally, I do a lot more live streams than videos these days. I don't do a lot of voiceovers, so I prefer to use dynamics. If you don't have a lot of money to spend on treating your room, then a dynamic microphone is the one that I highly recommend, especially XLR, dynamic handheld stage microphones. You can find really good cheap handheld stage microphones that can do the job just fine. If you have a treated room and you want a more natural sound for voiceover works, get a condenser microphone. I give you all that explanation because most of the people who buy microphones don't really know about this fact. They tend to pick microphones based on popularity rather than functionality. Some even pick microphones based on looks, and I think this is the reason why people pick dynamic broadcast microphones like the Shure SM7B over a dynamic handheld stage microphone like this. I've been rambling quite a bit, so let me conclude this real quick. There are lots and lots of content creators that can truly benefit a lot more with a dynamic microphone, especially an XLR dynamic microphone over a USB condenser microphone. There are lots and lots of people that can save their money to buy a handheld dynamic stage microphone rather than a broadcast dynamic microphone. Not a lot of people can spend money on treating their room, and I don't want people to waste their money on stuff that can be done by something that's a quarter of the price. Let me put it this way. The car that I have is a used 2015 Ford EcoSport. I prefer driving stick, but my brother is more comfortable with auto, so I got an auto. I used the car to get from one place to another, and I need an SUV because there are 3 of us, and we tend to use the car a lot, especially to go around the mall and buy stuff. I'd rather drive that car over, say, a Lamborghini or a Porsche. Same goes with microphones. I mean, yes, this $25 microphone, Behringer XM8500, is no match for the Shure SM7B, but it does the job just fine, and that's all that I can ask for. If you're an aspiring content creator on a budget, do your research and make sure that you pick your gears wisely. If you're on a budget, don't spend too much on a fancy microphone when you can get by just fine with an affordable microphone. One channel that I highly recommend for you to check out is Podcast Stage. I always go to him for microphone or audio gear reviews. Go check out his channel, link down below. That's all for the video today. If you like it, you can go ahead and click the like button and subscribe for more. If you wish, you can support me through the links down below, PayPal, Patreon, Subscribestar, whatever. And thanks for watching.